The neurologist's office in Lisbon falls silent. Dr. Helena Costa sits frozen, her pen hovering over the notepad, as the small boy across from her speaks with impossible clarity. His name is Miguel Santos, 5 years old, and for the past 20 minutes he has been describing events that happened 108 years before he was born. The lady was brighter than the sun, he says, his child's voice steady, but it didn't hurt to look at her. And Prima Lucia, she was the only one who talked to her. I wanted to talk too, but the lady only answered Lucia. Dr. Costa's hand trembles slightly. The boy's mother, Sarah Santos, sits beside her son, her face pale. This is their third specialist this month. The first two dismissed Miguel's memories as fantasy, perhaps something he saw on television. But Dr. Costa specializes in childhood neurological disorders, and something about this case makes her skin prickle with unease. Miguel, she says carefully, can you tell me the lady's name? The boy looks at her with eyes that seem older than they should be. She never said her name, not to me, but Prima Lucia told us after. She said the lady wanted us to pray the rosary every day, for the war to end. What war, Miguel? The big one. The first big one. He speaks as if this should be obvious. Men were getting hurt far away. My father from before, he was worried about the war. Dr. Costa writes rapidly now. The child speaks of World War I with casual familiarity, but uses present tense, as if he is still there. She has seen cases of false memory syndrome, of children who absorb information and reconstruct it as personal experience. But Miguel's details are oddly specific, emotionally textured in ways that feel authentic. Tell me about Prima Lucia, she prompts. Miguel's face brightens. She was 10, 3 years younger than I was. She was brave, braver than me. When the man locked us up and said he would boil us in oil, she didn't cry. Jacinta cried a little, but Lucia stayed strong. The mother gasps. Dr. Costa's eyes widen. The imprisonment of the shepherd children is a documented historical fact, but an obscure one. Certainly not common knowledge for a 5-year-old in 2025. Who locked you up, Miguel? The administrator, from Aurem. He was angry because so many people were coming to Cova da Iria. He thought we were lying. He thought it was about politics. Miguel's small hands clench into fists. But we weren't lying. The lady was real. I saw her. Not as clearly as Lucia and Jacinta, but I saw the light. I saw how everything changed when she came. Dr. Costa sets down her pen. In 15 years of practice, she has never encountered anything quite like this. The boy's affect is consistent, his details precise, his emotional response is appropriate to trauma he should not possess. She makes a decision that will change everything. Sarah, she says to the mother, I want to bring in a colleague, someone who specializes in unusual memory phenomena. Would you consent to Miguel being interviewed by a larger research team? The mother nods, desperate for answers. Dr. Costa reaches for her phone, scrolling through contacts until she finds the name she needs. Dr. Antonio Ferreira, historian of Portuguese religious studies at the University of Coimbra, and more importantly, a researcher of reincarnation cases who has spent 2 decades documenting children with apparent past life memories. Within the hour, Dr. Ferreira is on a train to Lisbon. Within 2 days, Miguel Santos is sitting in a university conference room, surrounded by recording equipment, historians, psychologists, and one very skeptical Jesuit priest named Father Gabriel Martins. The priest leans forward, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp. Young man, do you know what year it is? 2025, Miguel answers immediately. And how old are you? 5. I'll be 6 in April. But you say you remember being 14 years old. In Portugal, over a century ago. Miguel nods solemnly. I was Maria dos Anjos. I lived with my family near Aljustrel. Prima Lucia was my cousin. Her mother, Tia Maria Rosa, was my father's sister. Dr. Ferreira sits up sharply. He has spent the previous day in archives, pulling records from Fatima and the surrounding villages from 1917. The genealogical records are incomplete, many lost or damaged over decades, but he found references to extended family members of the shepherd children. One name appeared in parish baptism records, Maria dos Anjos Ferreira, born 1903, cousin to Lucia dos Santos. Miguel, Dr. Dion. Ferreira says slowly, Can you describe your house? The house where Maria lived? The boy closes his eyes. It was small, stone walls, one room where we all slept. My mother cooked outside when the weather was good. We had chickens, and I helped take care of my little brothers. There were 3 of them, João, Manuel, and the baby, Antonio. Dr. Ferreira consults his notes. The baptism records show Maria dos Anjos Ferreira had 3 younger brothers, though only first names are recorded, and they match, João, Manuel, Antonio. The room feels suddenly smaller, the air heavier. If this video reached you, it's because something in it is meant for you. Leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Continuing here, tell us about the first time, Father Martin says, his voice quiet now, less skeptical. The first time you saw, whatever you saw. Miguel's eyes are still closed. His breathing slows, and when he speaks again, his voice takes on a different quality, dreamlike, distant, as if he is watching scenes play out behind his eyelids. It was May 13th, he begins, 1917. I always mix those numbers up. He doesn't open his eyes. I was supposed to be helping Mama with the washing, but I saw Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta heading out with the sheep. I wanted to go with them. I wasn't supposed to. I was older. I had responsibilities, but something made me follow them. His small hands gripped the edge of the table. The adults in the room exchange glances but remain silent. Dr. Costa is recording everything. Father Martins leans forward, his previous skepticism giving way to something else, something that looks almost like fear. We walked to Cova da Iria, Miguel continues. It wasn't far, maybe half an hour. The sheep were grazing. Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta were playing, and I sat on a rock nearby, watching. It was a normal day. Sunny, warm, and then he pauses. His breath catches. Then there was light, like lightning but not scary. 2 flashes. I looked up at the sky, thinking it would rain, but there were no clouds. Lucia grabbed Francisco and Jacinta and said we should go, that a storm was coming, but I didn't move. I couldn't, because I saw something over the little oak tree. What did you see? Dr. Ferreira asks gently. Light, Miguel whispers. A woman made of light. Not exactly like a woman. More like the shape of a woman, but so bright. Lucia walked toward her. She wasn't afraid. Francisco and Jacinta followed. I stayed back. I was scared. I was 14, and I was scared of a light. Tears begin to roll down his cheeks. His mother reaches for his hand, but Dr. Costa signals for her to wait. The lady spoke. I couldn't hear the words. Not clearly, but I heard Lucia answering. Lucia said yes. She said we would come back. She said we would pray. And then the light began to rise, going up toward the east, and it was gone. Just like that. Gone. He opens his eyes. They are red, wet, and utterly bewildered. Lucia was crying, he says. Happy crying. She told us the lady said she was from heaven, that she wanted us to come back on the 13th of every month for 6 months, that we had to pray the rosary every day for peace, because the war would end, but only if people prayed and stopped offending God. Father Martins writes something in his notebook. The documented first apparition occurred on May 13th, 1917. The message the children reported matched exactly what Miguel just described. Did you tell anyone? Dr. Ferreira asks. Miguel nods. I told my mother that night. She didn't believe me. She said I was spending too much time with Lucia and her imagination. Tia Maria Rosa didn't believe Lucia either. She thought the children were lying, making up stories. Only my father listened. He said strange things happen that we don't understand, and maybe we should wait and see. Dr. Ferreira finds a note in his research file. Contemporary accounts mention that family members of the seers were divided, many hostile or skeptical, though some relatives remained neutral or quietly supportive. So you went back, Father Martin says. It's not a question. I went back, Miguel confirms. June 13th. There were more people this time, maybe 50 or 60. People from Aljustrel, from Fatima, from nearby villages. They wanted to see if the children were telling the truth. I stood at the back with the adults. I was too embarrassed to stand with Lucia and the little ones. I was 14. I didn't want people thinking I believed in fairy tales. His voice drops to barely a whisper. But when the light came again, I believed. Everyone saw something. Not the lady, no. The people couldn't see her, but they saw the light dim around us, like a cloud passed over the sun. Except there were no clouds. They heard a sound like buzzing, like bees, but there were no bees. And they saw the top of the little oak tree bend down, like someone was standing on it. Except no one was there that we could see. He looks directly at Father Martins. I saw her more clearly that time. The lady. She was young, maybe 16 or 17. She wore white, with a white veil, and her hands were joined in prayer, and there was something around her hands, like beads catching light. Lucia spoke to her again. The lady said Francisco and Jacinta would go to heaven soon, but Lucia would stay longer. She said Lucia had to spread devotion to her Immaculate Heart. Father Martins closes his eyes briefly. This matches the documented second apparition precisely. The message about the children's fates, later tragically confirmed when Francisco and Jacinta died young in the influenza pandemic, is historical record. And you? Dr. Costa asks. Did the lady say anything about you? Miguel shakes his head. No. She never spoke to me. I don't think she even saw me. Or maybe she did, but I wasn't important. I wasn't one of the chosen ones. I was just there, watching, remembering. The session continues for another hour. Miguel describes June, July, the mounting crowds, the growing hostility from local authorities. He describes his own family's tension, his mother's embarrassment, his father's quiet faith. He speaks of neighbors who mocked the children, of priests who were suspicious, of the mounting pressure as thousands began to descend on the tiny village. When Dr. Ferreira finally calls for a break, the boy looks exhausted, as if he has been running for miles. His mother takes him to get water and food. The specialists gather in a corner of the room. This is impossible, Father Martins says flatly. Children do not remember past lives. The church does not teach reincarnation. The church also didn't initially believe the children of Fatima, Dr. Ferreira counters, until the evidence became undeniable. What evidence do we have here? A child with a vivid imagination and access to Google? He knew Maria dos Anjos' brothers' names, Dr. Ferreira says quietly. Those are not in any publicly available source. I found them in parish records that haven't been digitized. He described family dynamics that match contemporary accounts I found in archived letters. And his emotional responses are consistent with genuine trauma recall, not fabricated memory. Dr. Costa adds, his neurological scans are normal. No signs of psychosis, no markers for dissociative disorders. Whatever he's experiencing, it's not pathological in any conventional sense. Father Martins is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, let him continue. But I want to test him. I want details that cannot possibly be known to a child in 2025. Details that would require him to have actually been there. They bring Miguel back. The priest's expression is stern, but not unkind. Maria, he says, using the past life name, tell me about July 13th. Miguel's face goes pale. That was the bad one, he whispers. That was when she showed us hell. The room seems to grow colder as Miguel speaks. His voice remains that of a 5-year-old child, but the words carry weight beyond his years, beyond his time. There were thousands of people by July, he says. Maybe 3,000, maybe more. I couldn't count them all. They filled Cova da Iria, standing in the heat, waiting. Some prayed, some mocked, some were just curious. I stayed close to Lucia because people were pushing, and I was afraid the little ones would get hurt. He wraps his arms around himself, though the conference room is warm. When the lady came, it was the same as before. The light, the dimming of the sun, the sound like thunder far away. Lucia spoke to her, but this time something was different. Lucia's face went white. She started to cry. Not happy crying, scared crying. Francisco saw something too, even though he couldn't hear. And Jacinta screamed. Miguel's own breath comes faster now. I couldn't see what they saw. Not exactly, but I felt it. Like heat, like standing too close to a fire. And for just a moment, just a flash, I saw red. Red like blood, red like fire. And I heard sounds, screaming, but not human screaming. Something worse. Father Martins leans forward. What did Lucia say the lady showed them? Hell, Miguel says simply. She showed them hell. A sea of fire with demons and souls burning. She said that's where sinners go when they don't repent. She wanted the children to pray, to sacrifice, to help save souls from going there. And she told them 3 secrets. Do you know the secrets? Doctor, Ferreira asks carefully. Miguel nods slowly. Lucia told me later. Not all of them, but parts. The first was what we saw, the vision of hell. The second was about Russia. The lady said if people didn't stop offending God, a worse war would come, and Russia would spread errors throughout the world. She said the Holy Father had to consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart. This matches the documented second secret of Fatima precisely. The prophecy about World War II and the spread of communism, revealed years later, has been studied by historians for decades. And the third secret? Father Martins asks. Miguel shakes his head. Lucia wouldn't tell me. She said the lady told her to keep it hidden for a long time. I asked and asked, but she wouldn't say. She just looked scared whenever I brought it up. The third secret of Fatima was indeed kept hidden by Lucia for decades, only revealed by the Vatican in the year 2000. Miguel's account matches this historical pattern exactly. After July, everything changed. Miguel continues. The authorities got involved. The administrator, Artur Santos, he was angry. He thought the whole thing was a trick by the priests to get power back, because Portugal was anti-clerical then. The government was against the church. He thought if he could break the children, make them admit they were lying, it would all stop. Dr. Ferreira nods. This historical context is accurate. Portugal in 1917 was in political turmoil, with strong anti-clericalism in government. August 13th, we went to Cova da Iria, like always, Miguel says. But when we got there, the administrator's men were waiting. They took Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta. Just grabbed them and put them in a wagon. People screamed. Some tried to stop them, but the men had authority. I tried to follow, but someone held me back. My father. He said if I went too, we'd all be in danger. Tears streamed down his face now. They took them to Urim, to the administrator's house. They kept them there for 2 days. The administrator questioned them separately, tried to get them to contradict each other, to admit they were lying. He threatened them. He said he would boil them in oil if they didn't tell the truth. Jacinta was 7 years old, and he told her he would boil her in oil. His voice breaks. But they didn't break. None of them. Even little Jacinta. They said the lady was real, and they would rather be killed than lie about it. Finally, the administrator gave up. He couldn't break children. He took them to the church in Aurem, pretended he was taking them home, but actually dropped them at the church to humiliate them. They had to walk part of the way home. Father Martins checks his notes. This account matches documented testimony exactly. The imprisonment, the threats, the interrogation tactics, even the detail about being dropped at the church, all confirmed by historical records and the children's later testimony. Because they were taken on the 13th, the lady came on a different day, Miguel continues. August 19th. It was a Sunday. We were at Valinhos, near Aljustrel. Lucia felt something calling her. She grabbed Francisco and Jacinta and ran to a place with trees. I followed, and the lady came again, even though it wasn't the 13th. She came because they couldn't come to her. He smiles slightly through his tears. That's when I knew it was real, really real, not imagination, not tricks. The lady changed her schedule for them. She loved them. You could feel it in the air when she was there. Love, so much love it almost hurt. Dr. Costa scribbles notes furiously. The August 19th apparition is documented fact, occurring after the children's release from imprisonment. September 13th, the crowd was even bigger, Miguel says. 10,000 people, maybe more. They came from all over Portugal. Some came from Spain. There were rich people in fancy clothes and poor people in rags. Everyone waiting for a sign. Did they get one? Dr. Ferreira asks. The same signs as before. The light changed. The air got cooler. Something like flower petals fell from the sky, but when people reached for them, they disappeared before touching the ground. And Lucia spoke to the lady, and the lady said in October she would perform a miracle so everyone would believe. She said to keep praying the rosary. Father Martins underlined something in his notes. The promise of a miracle in October is documented in contemporary testimony from September 1917. Everyone talked about October, Miguel says. For a whole month, that's all anyone talked about. What would the miracle be? Would the lady appear where everyone could see her? Would there be thunder and lightning? Would she speak out loud? My mother, who didn't believe before, started to wonder. She said if something really happened in October, she would believe. But if nothing happened, Lucia and the children should be punished for leading people astray. His face darkens. I was scared. Scared that nothing would happen. Scared that it would all be over. That I would look like a fool for believing. Scared for Lucia and Francisco and Jacinta, because if nothing happened, people would hurt them. The fear in his voice is visceral, real, the fear of someone who lived through it. October 13th came, he whispers, and everything changed. What they discovered that day would change everything. But before revealing what happened next, if you too believe that some stories transcend time, Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss the continuation of this journey. The morning of October 13th, 1917, dawned gray and miserable. Rain fell in sheets, turning the roads to mud, soaking everyone who traveled to Cova da Iria. Miguel's memories of that day are etched in crystalline detail, as if his soul recorded every moment and carried it forward through a century. "We left before dawn," he says, his eyes unfocused, seeing the past. "My father, my mother, my brothers and me. Even Mama came, even though she said she didn't believe. She said she was coming to see the children humiliated when nothing happened. But I think she hoped. Deep down, she hoped." He describes the journey, the crushing crowd that grew with every step closer to Cova da Iria. By some estimates, 70,000 people gathered that day. 70,000 souls standing in mud and rain, waiting for a miracle. "You couldn't move," Miguel says. "Bodies pressed against bodies. Everyone soaked to the bone. Children crying. Old people struggling to breathe in the crush. And the rain kept coming. It didn't stop. People said this was proof it was all fake, that God wouldn't make believers suffer in the rain. But we stayed. All of us. We stayed." Dr. Ferreira's research confirms the weather conditions. Newspaper accounts from that day describe torrential rain, skeptical journalists present to document what they expected to be a mass delusion. "I found Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta near the little oak tree," Miguel continues. "They looked scared, not of the lady, but of all the people. So many people. Some were praying, some were shouting questions, some were angry. One man yelled that if nothing happened, he would kill the children himself. My father pushed him back. His small hands clench into fists, the 5-year-old body responding to 14-year-old memories of rage. At noon, Lucia suddenly looked up. She said the lady was coming. I looked where she looked, and I saw the light again, faint, because of the rain. But there, the lady appeared over the oak tree. Lucia spoke to her, asked her name, asked what she wanted. What did the lady say? Father Martins asks. She said she was the Lady of the Rosary. She said people had to stop offending God, that they had to pray the rosary every day. She said the war would end that day. Miguel's voice strengthens. And then she opened her hands, and light poured out toward the sun, and Lucia screamed, "Look at the sun! Look at the sun!" The room is absolutely silent. So we looked, Miguel whispers. All 70,000 of us. We looked at the sun. He stands up abruptly, as if he cannot sit still for what comes next. The adults don't stop him. He walks to the window, looks out at modern Lisbon, but his eyes see another time. The rain stopped, just like that. Stopped. The clouds broke apart, and the sun appeared. But it wasn't the sun we knew. It was silver, like a disk of silver, spinning like a wheel, and it didn't hurt to look at it. You could stare right at it, and it didn't hurt. His voice rises with wonder. Colors started shooting out from it. Red, yellow, blue, green, purple. Colors spinning. Colors washing over the crowd, over the trees, over the ground. People's faces turned blue, then red, then yellow. It was like the whole world was a painting and God was changing the colors. Father Martins checks his documentation. Multiple newspaper accounts, including from the anti-clerical press, described exactly this phenomenon. Journalists who expected to mock peasant superstition instead found themselves reporting the impossible. And then, Miguel says, his voice dropping to barely audible, the sun started to fall. His mother gasps from her seat. Miguel doesn't notice. It fell toward the earth. It looked like it was going to crash into us, to burn us all up. People screamed. They thought the world was ending. They thought it was the apocalypse. Some fell to their knees confessing their sins out loud. Some cried for mercy. Some ran, trying to escape. But where could you run from the sun? He turns back to face the room, tears streaming down his face. I thought I was going to die. I thought we were all going to die. I grabbed my little brother Antonio and covered him with my body. My father was praying the Our Father. My mother was screaming, and Lucia was standing there with her arms raised, calm, like she knew we would be okay. How long did it last? Dr. Costa asks. 10 minutes, maybe 12. It felt like forever. And then the sun stopped. It just stopped, pulled back up into the sky, became normal again, the normal sun. And when we looked around, he spreads his arms wide. We were dry, all of us, 70,000 people who had been soaked to the bone, standing in mud, and we were completely dry. Our clothes, our hair, the ground, Everything. It was like the rain had never happened, like the sun had dried us in an instant. Dr. Ferreira's hands are shaking as he writes. This detail, the sudden drying of clothes and ground, is documented in testimony from multiple sources, including skeptical witnesses. People were crying, Miguel says, crying and praying. The atheists, the mockers, the ones who came to laugh at us, they were on their knees praying. One man, I remember him, he was a journalist. He had been writing notes, making fun of everything. He ripped up his notebook and threw it away. He was crying too hard to write. This matches the documented account of Avelino de Almeida, the anti-clerical journalist from O Século newspaper, who published a dramatic eyewitness account that contradicted everything he had expected to write. After that, everything was different, Miguel says quietly, sitting back down. The church started investigating. Important priests came to interview Lucia. Scientists came to study the trees, the ground, the air. Everyone wanted to know what happened. And everyone believed. You had to believe. 70,000 witnesses can't all be wrong. He looks at Father Martins. But you want to know if it was real, he says. You want to know if I really was there, or if I'm just a child who read about it somewhere. Yes, Father Martin says honestly. I do. Miguel nods. I understand. I would want proof too. So let me tell you something that's not in the books. Something I never told anyone, because it didn't seem important. The room leans forward collectively. After the miracle, after everyone was celebrating and crying, I saw my mother sitting on the ground. She was holding something, a small wooden cross, cheap thing, barely carved. I asked her where she got it. She said a woman gave it to her, an old woman in the crowd. The woman said to keep it, to remember this day, to remember that God loves us even when we don't deserve it. He looks directly at Father Martins. My mother kept that cross her whole life. When Maria dos Anjos, when I died, in 1943, I held that cross in my hands, and I thought about that day, October 13th, 1917, the day the sun danced, the day I knew God was real. The room is absolutely silent for a long moment. Then Father Martin says very quietly, "How did Maria die?" Miguel's face goes still. Fever. Infection. I was 40 years old. I never married. I took care of my parents as they got older, and when the fever came, I knew it was time. I wasn't afraid. I had seen the lady. I had seen the sun dance. I knew where I was going. He looks down at his small 5-year-old hands. I didn't expect to come back, he says simply. I didn't know that could happen, but here I am. Miguel now. Not Maria. But I remember. I remember everything. Dr. Ferreira spends the next 2 weeks in archives throughout Portugal. He searches parish records, death certificates, family letters, anything that might confirm or deny Miguel's account. The child's memories are so specific, so detailed, that they must be either genuine or the most elaborate fabrication ever attempted by a 5-year-old. He finds Maria dos Anjos Ferreira in the death records. Died February 1943, age 40, unmarried, of fever, buried in the cemetery at Aljustrel. The dates match. He finds her baptism record, her confirmation record. He finds references to her in letters written by neighbors, mentioned in passing as Lucia's cousin who helped with the little ones. He finds something else, too. In a collection of documents donated to the shrine of Fatima by a descendant of the Ferreira family, he finds a photograph. It's old, faded, probably taken in the early 1920s. It shows a group of young people standing outside a stone house. In the back row, slightly out of focus, is a young woman in her late teens or early 20s. The handwriting on the back identifies her. Maria dos Anjos, 1922. Dr. Ferreira brings the photograph to Lisbon. He arrives at Dr. Costa's office unannounced, the photograph in a protective sleeve. Miguel is there for another session. When the historian walks in, his face is ashen. I need to show him something, he says without preamble, without context. Just show him the photograph and ask if he recognizes anyone. Dr. Costa agrees. She takes the photograph, carefully keeping the back hidden, and places it in front of Miguel. The boy looks at it for a long moment. Then he points to the young woman in the back row. That's me, he says simply. That's Maria. I remember that day. My cousin Antonio took that photograph with a camera he borrowed from someone in Fatima. We were celebrating his engagement. I wore my best dress. I hardly ever wore dresses. Dr. Ferreira sits down heavily. No one has shown this photograph publicly. It exists in a private archive. There is no way a 5-year-old child in Lisbon could have seen it before this moment. What happened to Lucia? Miguel asks suddenly, looking up at the adults. In this life, I mean. I remember she was going to live longer, but I don't know what happened after Maria passed. Father Martin speaks, his voice gentle now, all skepticism gone. Sister Lucia lived to be 97 years old. She became a Carmelite nun. She wrote 4 memoirs about Fatima. She was the last surviving witness to the apparitions. She passed away in 2005. Miguel nods slowly. She must have had a long time to think about it all, to understand what the lady wanted. I only had those few months, but they were enough. They were everything. Over the following weeks, the research team subjects Miguel to every test they can devise. They bring in other historians, show him photographs of various locations in 1917 Portugal, ask him to identify buildings, people, objects. He passes every test. The details he provides, cross-referenced with historical records, are consistently accurate. They ask him about daily life, about farming practices, about the names of sheep, about children's games, about the taste of bread baked in wood ovens. He answers with the casual authority of someone who lived it. He describes the layout of houses that no longer exist. He names neighbors long dead. He recalls the price of goods in Portuguese currency that stopped being used a century ago. Father Martins, once the most skeptical, becomes one of Miguel's most ardent defenders. He writes a lengthy report to his superiors in the church, arguing that the case deserves serious theological consideration. Whether or not the church accepts reincarnation as doctrine, he argues, they cannot ignore the evidence of divine mystery in this child's memories. Dr. Costa publishes a paper in a peer-reviewed journal on childhood neurological anomalies, carefully documenting Miguel's case without making supernatural claims, simply presenting the data as it exists. The paper creates controversy. Some colleagues praise her rigor. Others accuse her of abandoning scientific principles. The debate rages in academic circles. Dr. Ferreira, the historian, is the one who finally pieces together the larger truth. He sits in the university conference room one evening, surrounded by documents, photographs, transcripts of Miguel's testimony, and he realizes what he is looking at. This is not simply a case of a child remembering a past life. This is evidence that the events of Fatima were real, witnessed by real people, experienced by real souls who carried those memories forward. Miguel's testimony, cross-referenced with documentary evidence, with eyewitness accounts, with historical records, creates a tapestry of validation that cannot be dismissed. The miracle of the sun happened. 70,000 people witnessed it. Newspapers reported it. Scientists studied it. And now, a century later, a soul who was there has returned to testify once more. Dr. Ferreira calls a press conference. He presents his findings to a room full of journalists, religious scholars, skeptics, and believers. He shows the photograph. He presents Miguel's testimony alongside historical documents. He makes a careful, measured case that, whatever one believes about reincarnation, the evidence suggests that this child possesses knowledge he could not have acquired through conventional means. The press conference is broadcast internationally. Within days, Miguel and his family are thrust into a spotlight they never sought. The family receives letters from around the world. Some offer support. Some accuse them of fraud. Some beg Miguel to pray for them, to intercede with the lady, as if proximity to Fatima's miracle gives him spiritual power. Miguel himself seems largely unaffected by the attention. When asked how he feels about being famous, he shrugs. "I'm not famous," he says. "The lady is famous. Lucia is famous. I was just there. I just watched. That's all." But in private moments, captured on Dr. Costa's recordings, Miguel expresses something deeper. "I think I came back to remember," he tells her one afternoon. "Not for me, for everyone else. People forget. They forget that miracles happen. They forget that God is real. They forget that we're loved. So maybe I came back to remember for them, to say, I was there, it was real, it happened, and it matters." 3 months after the initial interview, Miguel's memories begin to fade. It happens gradually, like dreams dissipating in morning light. He can still recall the major events, the apparitions, the miracle of the sun, but the emotional intensity dims, the details blur. He becomes increasingly simply a 5-year-old boy named Miguel. Dr. Costa documents this process carefully. It is, in its own way, as remarkable as the memories themselves, as if the veil between past and present is closing, as if Miguel's soul has delivered its message, and now retreats back into the simplicity of childhood. The last time Dr. Ferreira visits, Miguel is playing with toy cars in the clinic waiting room. When the historian asks if he remembers Maria dos Anjos, the boy looks up with a puzzled expression. Was she the lady in the picture? He asks. The one who looked like me? Yes, Dr. Ferreira says gently. I remember a little, Miguel says, turning back to his toys. I remember being happy. I remember seeing something beautiful, but it feels far away now, like a story someone told me a long time ago. Dr. Ferreira nods. He understands. The memories served their purpose. The testimony was given. The evidence was documented. Now Miguel can be simply Miguel, a boy with his whole life ahead of him, no longer burdened with the weight of the past. But the story doesn't end with Miguel's fading memories. The research team's findings spread through academic and religious communities. The debate over Fatima, over the reality of the apparitions, over the nature of faith and evidence, intensifies. Some see Miguel's case as proof that the supernatural is real, that souls persist, that the events of 1917 were exactly as witnesses described. Others argue for alternative explanations, for genetic memory, for collective unconscious, for elaborate hoax. Father Martins, in his final report to church authorities, writes something that transcends the debate. Whether we understand the mechanism by which this child accessed these memories is ultimately less important than what the memories testify to. A woman appeared to children in Portugal. She asked them to pray. She promised a miracle. The miracle occurred. 70,000 witnesses testified to it. And now, a century later, another witness has come forward. Whether through reincarnation or some other mystery we cannot explain, the message remains the same. God is real. Love is real. And we are called to something higher than ourselves. The Shrine of Fatima invites Miguel and his family to visit. They go on a quiet Tuesday morning, before the crowds of pilgrims arrive. Miguel stands in Cova da Iria, at the place where the little oak tree once stood, now marked by a chapel. He looks around at the landscape, familiar and strange at once. It was smaller then, he says to his mother, just a field with rocks and trees. Now it's so big, so many buildings. He kneels at the chapel and prays, the prayer of a 5-year-old boy, simple and pure. Thank you for letting me remember, he whispers. Thank you for showing me it was real. As they leave, Miguel turns back one last time. For just a moment, in the slant of morning light, he thinks he sees a figure in white standing by the chapel. But when he blinks, it's gone. Just light. Just sun, just memory. The story of Miguel Santos, the boy who remembered Fatima, becomes part of the larger story of Fatima itself. It is studied, debated, analyzed, and ultimately accepted by some and rejected by others. But for those who meet Miguel, who look into his eyes and hear his voice, there is something undeniable, a truth that transcends evidence, a witness who testifies not for fame or attention, but simply because he was there. He was there when the lady came. He was there when the sun danced. He was there when 70,000 people fell to their knees in mud and rain and witnessed the impossible. And he remembers. 1 year after the press conference, Dr. Ferreira publishes a book documenting the entire case. The book includes Miguel's testimony, historical records, scholarly analysis, and photographs. It is titled simply, I Was There, A Soul's Testimony to Fatima. It becomes an international bestseller, translated into 30 languages. Critics attack it as religious propaganda. Supporters hail it as evidence of divine mystery. The scientific community remains divided. But the book reaches millions of people who never heard of Fatima, who never knew about the miracle of the sun, who never considered that the spiritual realm might intersect with the physical in verifiable ways. Miguel, now 6 years old, does not read the book. He goes to school, plays with friends, lives a normal childhood. Sometimes on October 13th, his mother takes him to Mass, and he kneels quietly, remembering something he can no longer quite name, a feeling of light and love that once filled his entire being. Dr. Costa continues her research, documenting other cases of children with unusual memories. None are as detailed or as verifiable as Miguel's, but patterns emerge. She begins to wonder if consciousness is more fluid than science has acknowledged, if memory can somehow transcend the physical death of the brain, if souls carry forward not just into some abstract afterlife, but back into life itself. Father Martins is assigned by his superiors to study the phenomenon of mystical memory across Catholic history. He finds other cases, scattered through centuries, of people claiming to remember witnessing biblical events, apparitions, miracles. Most cannot be verified, but some, like Miguel's, contain details that defy conventional explanation. The research team remains in contact, meeting quarterly to discuss their findings, to debate interpretations, to wrestle with the implications. They do not always agree. Dr. Costa maintains agnostic scientific rigor. Father Martins interprets through theological framework. Dr. Ferreira seeks historical truth. But they are united in their conviction that something extraordinary occurred with Miguel, something that demands attention, consideration, respect. 5 years pass. Miguel is 10 years old now. His memories of being Maria dos Anjos are gone, buried beneath years of new experiences, new memories, new life. When people ask him about Fatima, about the lady, about the sun, he smiles politely and says he doesn't remember much anymore. But on certain nights, when he dreams, he sees light, brilliant, warm light that doesn't hurt to look at. And in the light, a figure in white, young and beautiful and infinitely kind. The figure never speaks in the dreams. She simply looks at him with love, with recognition, with blessing. And Miguel wakes feeling peaceful, though he cannot say why. He goes about his day feeling loved, though he cannot name the source. He moves through his childhood, carrying something ineffable, something sacred, something that once burned bright as the sun, and now glows softly in the depths of his soul. The Lady of Fatima asked the children to pray, to sacrifice, to remember. Through 3 young shepherds, she delivered a message to the world. Through Miguel Santos, a century later, she reminded the world that the message was real, that the miracle was true, that faith is not blind belief but response to genuine encounter with the divine. Whether one accepts Miguel's memories as proof of reincarnation, as evidence of supernatural intervention, or as a psychological phenomenon science has yet to explain, the core truth remains unchangeable. Something happened at Fatima in 1917, something witnessed by thousands, something documented by skeptics and believers alike, something that changed lives, inspired faith, and testified to a reality beyond the merely physical. And now, through the memories of a child, we are invited once again to consider that reality, to ask ourselves what we believe, to wonder if the world contains more mystery than we typically allow, to remember that sometimes the most profound truths come not through arguments and evidence alone, but through testimony, through witness, through the voice of one who says simply, honestly, powerfully, "I was there." In the end, Dr. Ferreira writes a final addendum to his book, published in the 5th edition. It reads, "The case of Miguel Santos challenges our understanding of memory, consciousness, and reality itself. Whether his memories represent genuine reincarnation, genetic memory, mystical vision, or some phenomenon we have yet to name, they serve a purpose that transcends academic classification. They remind us that the events of Fatima were not myth or legend, but lived experience. People were there. They saw. They testified. And through Miguel, we are connected to those witnesses across the gulf of a century. We are reminded that miracles do not belong solely to the past, but echo forward through time, calling each generation to faith, to wonder, to hope. Miguel has given us a gift, the gift of remembering that we are not alone, that we are seen, that we are loved. For that gift, whatever its origin, we should be grateful. Stories like this connect us in ways we don't always understand. Show that you're here. Leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what else you'd like to discover. Miguel's testimony reminds us that faith is not about believing impossible things, but about opening ourselves to the possibility that the impossible might be real, that a lady of light might appear to children in a field, that the sun might dance in the sky, that a soul might remember, across the vast expanse of time, what it witnessed when heaven touched earth. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because some truths are too important to keep to ourselves.